Welcome to Strides to Solutions. I'm Esther Adams, and today we're diving into a dimension of attention and hyperactivity disorders that's quietly sabotaging treatment efforts across thousands of families. What happens when the parents themselves struggle with the same neurological differences as their children? This isn't just another discussion about genetics or family patterns. We're talking about a hidden epidemic that's undermining everything from bedtime routines to behavioral therapy success rates. Picture this: a mother sits in a parenting class, diligently taking notes about consistent discipline strategies. She nods enthusiastically as the therapist explains the importance of following through with consequences. But 3 days later, when her child refuses to clean their room, she can't remember if she said no screen time for an hour or no screen time until bedtime. Her own attention challenged brain, overwhelmed by the chaos of the moment, defaults to whatever feels easiest. The carefully crafted behavior plan crumbles. This scenario plays out in countless homes every day, yet most treatment approaches pretend it doesn't exist. We design interventions for parents who can remember complex strategies, regulate their emotions during crises, and maintain consistency across weeks of implementation. But what happens when the very executive function skills required for effective parenting are the ones that parents themselves struggle with most? The research we're exploring today reveals something that's both obvious and revolutionary. When parents have attention and impulse control challenges, it creates a cascade effect that touches every aspect of family functioning. It's not just about genetics passing down from one generation to the next. It's about the daily reality of trying to provide structure when your own brain craves stimulation, attempting to model emotional regulation when you're fighting your own dysregulation, and maintaining the steady consistency that struggling children desperately need when consistency feels like swimming upstream. Let's start with what happens to discipline when parents have their own neurological challenges. The research paints a stark picture. Both mothers and fathers with attention and impulse control symptoms show significantly higher rates of inconsistent discipline, increased use of corporal punishment, and reduced involvement in their children's emotional lives. This isn't because they don't care or because they're bad parents. It's because their brains are wired differently in ways that make consistent parenting extraordinarily challenging. The mechanism here is more complex than simple forgetfulness. Parents struggling with their own attention and emotional regulation develop what researchers call cognitive errors, negative, helpless beliefs about their parenting abilities that become self fulfilling prophecies. When their struggling child has a meltdown in the grocery store, their inner dialogue isn't, "This is normal behavior that I can handle with the right strategies." Instead, it's, "I'm a terrible parent. Nothing I do works. Everyone is staring at me." These cognitive distortions, combined with increased home chaos and their own emotional dysregulation, create a perfect storm. Parenting becomes reactive rather than proactive. Rules change based on the parent's energy level rather than clear family expectations. Consequences get forgotten in the heat of the moment or applied inconsistently depending on whether the parent remembered to take their own medication that morning. Think about what this means for a child who already struggles with attention and impulse control, who relies heavily on predictability and clear expectations. Monday's consequence for not doing homework might be losing video games for an hour. Tuesday, the same behavior gets forgotten because the parent was hyper-focused on a work project. Wednesday, the parent snaps and takes away all privileges for a week, then feels guilty and reduces it to a day. The child never learns what to actually expect, making it impossible for them to modify their behavior accordingly. But the inconsistency goes deeper than just discipline. Parents with their own neurological challenges often struggle with emotional regulation during the exact moments when their children need them to be most regulated. When their child is having a meltdown, these parents might join the dysregulation rather than providing the calm, steady presence that could help de escalate the situation. This creates what researchers identify as a key pathway. Parental symptoms contribute to child externalizing behaviors through inconsistent discipline and reduced emotional support. It's not that parental struggles directly create worse child outcomes, but rather that they establish patterns of family interaction that make attention and behavioral symptoms more difficult to manage for everyone involved. The implications for treatment are staggering. Traditional behavioral parent training programs assume that parents can consistently implement strategies week after week. They assume parents can remember complex behavior charts, maintain emotional regulation during tantrums, and follow through with planned consequences even when they're stressed, tired, or overwhelmed. For parents with their own neurological differences, these assumptions often don't hold. They might leave parenting class feeling empowered and determined, only to find themselves 3 days later having forgotten half the strategies or finding them too overwhelming to implement when their own executive function is depleted. The research on intervention effectiveness reveals concerning patterns. While parental symptoms don't completely destroy treatment outcomes, they significantly reduce their effectiveness. Parents with attention and impulse control challenges showed reduced benefit from behavioral parent training across multiple measures, though the effects varied depending on the specific intervention and family context. The problem is that most behavioral interventions treat parental neurological differences as background noise rather than a central factor that needs to be addressed. They teach parents what to do without acknowledging that the parents themselves might struggle with the very cognitive skills needed to do it consistently. This points toward what researchers call tailored approaches, interventions that directly address parental symptoms while teaching parenting skills. Instead of just learning about timeouts, parents might need help developing their own organizational systems to remember when timeouts are appropriate. Instead of just learning about emotional regulation techniques for children, parents might need their own emotion regulation support. Some promising approaches combine parent training with concurrent treatment for parental symptoms. Others provide more intensive follow up and support, recognizing that parents with attention challenges need more practice and reinforcement to develop new habits. Still others focus on family systems approaches that help entire families develop routines and structures that work with, rather than against, different neurological wiring. The broader context of parenting styles reveals additional layers of complexity. Research consistently shows that authoritative parenting, characterized by warmth combined with clear structure and consistent discipline, produces the best outcomes for children with attention and behavioral challenges. This approach provides the optimal balance of emotional support and behavioral guidance that struggling brains need to thrive. But here's the catch. Authoritative parenting requires significant executive function skills from parents. You need to plan consistent responses across different situations. You need to regulate your own emotions during conflicts so you can respond thoughtfully rather than reactively. You need to maintain long term goals while managing immediate behavioral challenges. You need to communicate clearly and calmly even when you're stressed or frustrated. These are precisely the areas where parents with attention and impulse control challenges often struggle most. It's like asking someone with a broken leg to run a marathon. They might understand the importance of reaching the finish line, but they're missing fundamental capabilities needed to get there. The research shows that authoritarian parenting, strict, punitive, and low in warmth, tends to worsen symptoms in children with attention challenges. Kids with these neurological differences often respond to harsh criticism and punishment with increased oppositional behavior, creating escalating cycles of conflict that exhaust everyone involved. Yet, overwhelmed parents often default to authoritarian approaches because they feel simpler and more immediate than authoritative strategies. Permissive parenting presents different challenges. While it might feel more comfortable for parents who struggle with consistency, the lack of structure and boundaries can be particularly problematic for children who rely on external structure to support their developing self regulation skills. The cruel irony is that parents with their own neurological challenges often know that authoritative parenting is ideal, but they lack the consistent executive function support needed to implement it day after day. They need interventions that don't just teach them what to do, but actually help them develop the personal regulation skills that make consistent implementation possible. Family stress emerges as a crucial factor that amplifies all of these challenges. The research reveals that family stress negatively impacts treatment adherence, primarily by increasing parenting stress and reducing family resilience. When families are under external pressure, financial strain, work demands, health problems, maintaining consistent parenting strategies becomes exponentially more difficult. This is particularly relevant for families where parents have their own neurological challenges because they may experience higher baseline stress levels due to their symptoms. Managing their own attention and impulse control while trying to parent a child with similar challenges while dealing with normal life stressors can create perfect storms where even well intentioned treatment plans become impossible to maintain. Family resilience acts as a crucial buffer in these situations. Families with strong connections, effective communication, and adaptive coping strategies can better maintain treatment engagement even when facing challenges. But building family resilience often needs to be an explicit treatment goal rather than something we assume families already have. The research on maternal versus paternal involvement reveals important differences that have significant implications for how we approach family treatment. Both parents influence their children's academic and emotional outcomes, but their impacts differ in meaningful ways that become even more pronounced when neurological challenges are involved. Maternal mental health, including attention and emotional regulation symptoms, appears to have particularly strong effects on children's emotional well being and overall quality of life. Mothers with these challenges often report higher levels of anxiety and depression, creating emotional climates that can be difficult for children with similar struggles to navigate. When mothers struggle with their own emotional regulation, it becomes harder for them to provide the emotional co regulation that their children need to develop their own emotional skills. Paternal involvement shows special importance for academic outcomes in children with attention challenges. Fathers who feel competent and engaged in their children's education can buffer some of the negative academic impacts. They can provide additional structure, accountability, and support that helps children navigate school challenges more successfully. However, fathers with their own attention and organizational challenges may struggle with the sustained involvement and consistency that this buffering effect requires. They might start the school year with elaborate organizational systems for homework monitoring, only to have those systems fall apart when their own symptoms interfere with maintenance. The research shows that hostility from either parent contributes to persistent symptoms and behavioral problems. When parents respond to their children's challenging behaviors with criticism, frustration, or anger, it can worsen symptoms and create negative cycles that are difficult to break. For parents with their own emotional regulation challenges, managing responses during difficult parenting moments requires skills they may not have fully developed. This highlights the importance of addressing both parents' emotional regulation and stress management as part of comprehensive treatment. Traditional approaches that focus primarily on child behavior management miss these crucial family dynamics. Sibling relationships add another layer of complexity that's often overlooked in treatment planning, but becomes even more complicated when parental challenges are involved. The research reveals that siblings of children with attention and behavioral difficulties face unique challenges that can create lasting impacts on family functioning. Siblings in these families experience significantly more conflict, reduced warmth, and ongoing emotional challenges. Non affected siblings often report feeling victimized by their struggling sibling, sometimes experiencing aggression or manipulation that parents may struggle to address consistently. They may also feel overlooked or receive less parental attention, leading to perceptions of unfairness that can damage family relationships. The tendency for non affected siblings to take on parentified roles becomes particularly pronounced when parents themselves have neurological challenges. When parents struggle with consistency and emotional regulation, other children in the family may feel pressure to fill gaps in family functioning. They might take responsibility for managing their siblings' behavior, mediating family conflicts, or providing emotional support that should be coming from parents. This parentification can have lasting effects on children's development and their relationships with both their struggling sibling and their parents. Yet most treatment approaches focus primarily on the parent child dyad without addressing these broader family dynamics that significantly impact treatment success. Lower family satisfaction and quality of life among siblings suggest that attention and behavioral challenges affect entire family systems in ways that require comprehensive intervention approaches. When parents have similar struggles, these effects can be amplified as siblings may feel even less supported and more responsible for maintaining family stability. Marital and partner relationships face enormous stress when raising a child with neurological differences, and this stress can become overwhelming when one or both parents also have similar challenges. The research shows that parenting stress often spills over into couple relationships, affecting communication, satisfaction, and overall relationship stability in ways that can undermine the very support systems families need most. The impact on marital satisfaction is largely mediated by parental stress and feelings of parenting self efficacy. When parents feel ineffective or overwhelmed by their child's behavior, it affects not just their relationship with their child, but also their relationship with their partner. Arguments about inconsistent discipline, disagreements about consequences, and blame around whose fault various problems are can create ongoing conflict that weakens the parental partnership. For couples where one or both partners have attention and impulse control challenges, these difficulties multiply. The partner without these struggles might feel frustrated by their partner's inconsistency or forgetfulness. The partner with neurological differences might feel criticized and defensive about their parenting struggles. Both might feel overwhelmed by trying to manage their child's challenges while also managing their own relationship difficulties. However, the research also reveals protective factors that can help couples maintain strong relationships even under these challenges. Couples who engage in positive dyadic coping, working together to manage stress rather than blaming each other, can maintain relationship quality even when facing significant parenting challenges. Problem focused coping strategies, where couples actively work together to address specific challenges rather than just managing emotions, show particular promise. When couples can collaborate on developing systems that work for their family's unique constellation of neurological differences, they often feel more connected rather than more stressed. Emotional intelligence in both partners serves as an additional protective factor. Partners who can recognize and manage their own emotions while also responding supportively to their partner's emotional needs can weather the storms that challenging parenting often brings. This highlights the importance of supporting couple relationships as part of comprehensive treatment, particularly when parental challenges are involved. Parents who feel supported by their partners are better able to manage their own symptoms and provide more consistent parenting to their children. Extended family dynamics add yet another layer of complexity that can either support or undermine treatment efforts. Grandparents and other extended family members can be tremendous resources for families dealing with attention and behavioral challenges, but they can also inadvertently make things more difficult if they don't understand the conditions or if they provide conflicting messages about expectations and consequences. The research reveals mixed effects of grandparent involvement that depend heavily on the quality and consistency of their approach. In some contexts, particularly when grandparents provide overprotective care or have limited understanding of neurological differences, their involvement can actually increase symptom severity. This might happen when grandparents use different rules, provide inconsistent consequences, or undermine parents' efforts to maintain structure. However, when extended family members are educated about attention and behavioral challenges and can provide consistent, supportive care, they become valuable resources that can help buffer family stress and provide additional stability for children. Grandparents who understand these conditions and can implement consistent expectations can provide respite for overwhelmed parents while also giving children additional sources of support and structure. Cultural factors play important roles in how extended family dynamics affect outcomes. In some cultural contexts, traditional family hierarchies or communication patterns may conflict with effective management strategies. Rigid expectations about child behavior, reluctance to acknowledge neurodevelopmental differences, or stigma around mental health treatment can create additional barriers for families trying to implement effective interventions. The question of involving extended family in treatment becomes particularly important when parents have their own challenges. These families may need additional support and structure, and extended family members who understand both adult and child neurological differences can provide crucial assistance with maintaining routines and implementing strategies consistently. Parental knowledge about attention and behavioral challenges emerges as a crucial factor that affects all of these family dynamics, but acquiring and retaining this knowledge can be particularly difficult for parents who themselves have similar struggles. The research shows that parents with greater understanding demonstrate lower stigma, more positive emotional responses, and better treatment engagement. Parents who understand these conditions as neurobiological rather than behavioral choices are less likely to respond with frustration and more likely to implement appropriate supports. They're more likely to recognize that their child's behavior stems from brain differences rather than defiance, leading to more patient and effective responses. However, traditional psychoeducation approaches may not be optimal for parents with attention and memory challenges. These parents might struggle with the cognitive demands of lengthy educational sessions. They might find it difficult to organize and apply complex information. They might need information presented in shorter segments, with more visual and experiential components, and with ongoing reinforcement rather than one time presentations. The research shows that parental knowledge mediates the relationship between symptoms and family functioning, but for parents with their own neurological differences, acquiring this knowledge and translating it into consistent action requires additional support and modified approaches. Family routines emerge as particularly important for managing conflicts and supporting overall family functioning. The research consistently shows that consistent family routines reduce behavioral problems, improve emotional regulation, and create the predictability that struggling brains need to function optimally. However, establishing and maintaining routines requires significant executive function skills that may be challenging for parents with attention and organizational difficulties. Creating effective routines requires planning and forethought. Maintaining them requires working memory, time management, and sustained attention. Modifying them when they're not working requires cognitive flexibility and problem solving skills. Parents with their own neurological challenges may understand intellectually that routines are important, but find themselves struggling to create and maintain them consistently. They might start strong with elaborate morning routines, only to have them fall apart when life gets busy or stressful. They might forget key elements of established routines or find themselves too overwhelmed to enforce them consistently. This points to the need for interventions that not only teach the importance of routines, but also provide concrete support for establishing and maintaining them. This might include visual reminder systems, external accountability structures, or simplified routine frameworks that account for parental symptoms. Successful routine implementation for families with parental challenges often requires building in flexibility and forgiveness. Rather than expecting perfect consistency, families might need systems that can bounce back quickly from missed days or forgotten elements. They might need routines that are simple enough to maintain even during stressful periods. The question of whether both parents should be involved in treatment interventions becomes particularly complex when parental neurological differences are considered. While the research suggests that involving both parents may enhance outcomes for children, practical barriers become more significant when one or both parents have attention and organizational challenges. Parents with these difficulties may struggle with the time management required to attend multiple treatment sessions. They might have difficulty with the sustained attention needed for lengthy interventions. They might find it challenging to remember and implement strategies between sessions, or they might feel overwhelmed by the complexity of multi component treatment plans. However, the potential benefits of involving both parents may be even greater when parental challenges are present. If only one parent receives training while the other continues to struggle with inconsistent discipline and emotional dysregulation, family conflicts and mixed messages to children are likely to persist. The research on combined parent and child interventions shows broad benefits when both parents participate, with improvements seen in child behavior, emotion regulation, and social competence. However, some studies note that mothers often report more significant changes in parenting practices than fathers, suggesting that the degree of engagement from each parent influences outcomes. This highlights the need for treatment approaches that are flexible enough to accommodate different levels of parental involvement while still maximizing the benefits of including both parents when possible. For families with parental challenges, this might mean shorter but more frequent sessions, simplified strategies that are easier to remember and implement, or additional practice opportunities and support. The most effective approaches often combine multiple types of intervention: parent training that accounts for parental symptoms, family therapy that addresses communication and relationship dynamics, individual treatment for parental challenges when needed, and sometimes family based mindfulness or stress management interventions that help everyone develop better regulation skills. These comprehensive approaches recognize that when parents have their own neurological differences, traditional behavioral interventions alone are often insufficient. Families need support that addresses the multiple levels at which these symptoms interact with family functioning. Understanding parental challenges also helps explain why some families seem to struggle with treatment adherence or don't respond as expected to evidence based interventions. Rather than attributing poor outcomes to lack of motivation, resistance, or poor parenting, clinicians can recognize that parental symptoms may be creating barriers that need direct attention. This shifts the conversation from blame to understanding, from expecting families to fit interventions to adapting interventions to fit families. When we recognize that a significant percentage of parents of children with attention and behavioral challenges also have similar symptoms, we can see that our standard approaches may be systematically underserving a large portion of the families who need help most. For families currently navigating these challenges, the research suggests several important principles that can guide their approach. First, recognizing and addressing parental symptoms isn't optional or secondary to child treatment. It's often essential for treatment success. Parents can't consistently implement strategies that require cognitive skills they don't currently have adequate support for. Second, family level interventions that address communication patterns, stress management, and relationship dynamics are often more effective than focusing solely on parent child behavioral interactions. Neurological differences affect entire family systems, and successful treatment usually needs to address those systemic effects rather than just individual behaviors. Third, building family resilience and adaptive coping strategies may be as important as teaching specific behavioral techniques. Families that can maintain connection during difficult periods and adapt flexibly to challenges are better able to sustain treatment gains over time, even when specific strategies need to be modified. The research emphasizes the importance of reducing stigma and self blame within families. When parents understand that their struggles with consistency or emotional regulation stem from neurobiological differences rather than character flaws, they're more likely to seek appropriate help and less likely to develop the negative self beliefs that interfere with effective parenting. The goal isn't to create perfect parents or perfect families. The research makes clear that perfection isn't necessary for positive outcomes. Instead, the goal is to help families understand their unique patterns of strengths and challenges and develop systems that work with rather than against the neurological realities they face. When parents have their own attention and impulse control challenges, this requires approaches that are more comprehensive, flexible, and supportive than traditional behavioral interventions typically provide. It requires recognition that family neurological differences create unique dynamics that need specialized attention. Most importantly, it requires shifting from approaches that expect families to adapt to interventions toward approaches that adapt interventions to fit families. This research reveals that attention and behavioral challenges are truly family conditions in ways that go far beyond genetic inheritance. While they may be diagnosed in individual children, their effects ripple through entire family systems in complex patterns that require thoughtful, comprehensive responses. Understanding and addressing these family level dynamics isn't just important for individual treatment success. It's essential for creating interventions that can help families not just manage symptoms, but develop the resilience and connection that allow them to thrive together. Thank you for joining me in exploring these complex family dynamics. Understanding how parental neurological differences affect family functioning and treatment outcomes is crucial for developing more effective, compassionate approaches that serve the real needs of the diverse families seeking help. The research shows us that when we account for the full complexity of these families, we can develop interventions that actually work in the real world rather than just in ideal conditions.